humans. This week on
I am your fellow human.
Greetings, fellow humans. This is Doing the Thing podcast with your host, Scott Boersma. That's me. And today on the show is Devon Jecmen. Devon and I met last year on a trip that was really chaotic and hectic. We have been working at Deer Hill, worked a couple trips at Deer Hill for the last couple of years, and Devon was initially from Flagstaff and initially a raft guide, and now is living in Durango, working 5 jobs, allegedly anyway, possibly 6, we don't know. Greetings, Devon.
Hello, thanks for having me on.
Devon, do you want to talk about that trip that we did together and how chaotic it was?
It was very chaotic. You were my first PL, so program leader. Learned a lot from you from that trip. We had a student. Our students aren't supposed to bring phones, and one of our students snuck a flip phone, onto our river trip, and that was the last night, right?
Yeah, it was the last night on the river.
Finally got some service because you're almost out of the canyon, and he got a phone call, and I think we were sitting at dinner, maybe.
Yeah, so it was like one kid sneaks a phone on, and then there's another kid who's feeling ill, and the ill kid gets the phone from the kid who sneaks it on and calls his mom at the last camp on the river. And we still at this point have another like 4 nights or 5 nights with these students. And then you're at dinner and the phone rings.
And he just looks at you and then runs away.
And our third instructor, she goes after and then talks with mom for like half an hour. So then I sneak away and let Bates know on my phone that, by the way, this is happening and they need to know ASAP. And from there, we then had to do a COVID test for this kid, and this kid was immediately positive. Didn't even have to wait the whole 15 minutes.
We're supposed to go stay with a service host in 2 hours or whatever.
We're still at the boat ramp, and so then we need to drive another 2 hours to get to our service host, and now we have to figure out if we can even go do service there, if that's okay with them or not. Of course, there was then I forgot like back tents and stuff.
But it all worked out. It buffed. We figured it out.
I think that was the most that I've ever been on a phone, just talking to base, was like that day of like, are we gonna go? Are we not gonna go? Here's my 3rd trip up the top of the boat ramp to get better service. And then it was like mom was supposed to call my phone, and I was like, I don't want that. But anyway, it was good. So Devon, first off, what are the things that you learned from me on this trip?
Oh,
from that trip specifically.
Well, I think that was my first or second Deer Hill trip. I don't know, but you showed me all of the paperwork immediately. You were like, yeah, I can look at all this if you want, and like help me out. I was like, oh, cool. This is good for me to know. So immediately learned that side of things. And I think when all of that stuff was happening at the boat ramp, I don't know, you have like an anxiety about you, but it's also a very calm demeanor when it needs to be. So you'll be like, oh, I'm going back up to the top to like get this phone call going, and they don't know what's going on or whatever. But then when you address the group, it was like, here's what's happening. That's it. We'll see what's next, which I think is very fair. It's just like, here's the information I have. We're waiting for more information. We'll make a decision once we get it. So I think that was helpful.
Definitely more than I bargained. That was definitely one of the more chaotic trips that I had that season. So Devon, what got you into being a raft guide and just in the outdoor industry in general?
During college, I had a group of girlfriends. There was 4 of us. And so one of them one summer was like, I am going to go up to Maine and do this guide school and become a raft guide if any of you want to come. And so all of us were like, yeah, let's go do it. And then we got to talking to the people up in Maine a little more, and we were like, no, it's going to be way too cold up there and way too far. We're in Salt Lake City. Instead, we decided to go to Washington, and it turns out it's equally as cold. Well, it's probably not as cold, but it was freezing. And then, the training was, because it was on the east side or the west side of the Cascades, and then the river that we actually guided on was the east side, and so it was more desert over there. But yeah, anyways, my best friends was like, yeah, I'm gonna do this. Do any of you want to come? And we're all like, yeah, let's do it. So
did you all just end up becoming raft guides after that?
that's we all worked together. There were three of us all guided again, but for different places. And then one of them moved up to Seattle. And she is a big kayaker now. So that's where she went with it.
That's just like hilarious. Kind of like, oh yeah, like you want to do this? You want to go and learn how to be a boater? Okay.
Yeah. Out of, the tents families get that have like 4 rooms in them and like a room that's like huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of those up for the summer, and that was our home.
Was that what most people were doing? Most people were just like camping out for the season?
Sort of. Other companies, our company was not good, not great. Love that I learned a lot, but we didn't have any like land for us to be on. So we were kind of own devices, whereas the other companies had like that people could like car on or set up tents or whatever. So to answer your question, many people were in their cars or like in sort of guide housing.
Did you have any inclination of being like doing before like invite go to Maine?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know about guiding. I think definitely like being in the outdoors, but I think at that point I probably wasn't like confident enough to think that I could do it. And I knew friends growing up that were like my age but guiding on the Grand Canyon, and that was just something that was like so me. I was just like, what? Like that's good for them. I don't know that I'd ever be able to do that, but yeah.
So what made you make the transition from guiding to outdoor education?
Well, I took a job in Durango as a case manager for a behavioral health company. And so that was more of like a social work type job. And I found it to be really fulfilling, but also, emotionally burnt out pretty quickly. And it was really hard to leave, but I think I knew that I needed something different. And so I was thinking about going back to guiding, but I didn't really want to be a commercial guide again, because I wanted to like still have something a little more fulfilling. And so I was looking at different jobs in the outdoor industry. And there was a girl renting a room in our house at the time who was like, oh, I used to work for this company called Deer Hill. They like basically own the San Juan, so you might not love it, but like you should just apply and see what happens. And so I did.
And here we are. And then there we were on the San Juan being like, why is there a phone going off? Right.
Yeah. And then I was like, okay, I'm 28th graders. This is different. But in a good way.
What had like, so this is your second or is this your third season doing it? Have you done 2 seasons or just 3 seasons of outdoor ed?
This was my second year.
So you've done this for 2 years, and what has been like the thing that you've like taken from from your experiences, like being an educator, being an instructor?
Like for myself, okay. Thing I've taken away. I was thinking about this earlier in terms of the other jobs that I'm working now, in the off season, but just kind of okay with the time that it takes to like move the transition periods of becoming an instructor and like leading or like having your own version of doing something. Like in most jobs, it's good to be trained to do something a certain way and like learn foundation, but then eventually you're like, okay, like not exactly how I want to say this or do this or show this or whatever. And I think at first I was like, man, I really want to like be where Scott is already, or like I want to be able to like say that distinctly, or like I don't know, do some of that. But I think it's just helpful to like take a step back and be like, it's okay to be where you're at and what you're doing is already like good enough, and then you can just work from there, if that makes sense.
Being okay with the place you are and knowing that it takes way longer to get to where you want to go than what you want it to be?
Yeah. Yeah.
Add a what's your favorite that you've done so far?
Probably summer trip this year, I think I would say. Our programs are longer. So this one I think is one of Deer Hill's longer trips. For an instructor, it's 4 weeks because you have days at the beginning that you're prepping and days at the end that you're debriefing and whatever. But for the students, it's 3 weeks. And so we had a really small group this year. I think it was 7 or 8 students, and we took them rafting, and then we went to service, and then we went backpacking in the Wiminooch, and yeah, it was just a great group of humans for 3 weeks.
What made them a great group of humans?
That's a good question. They were so this group of students was 15, 17. Most of them were a little bit older in that age range. And yeah, they were just so to be a part of what we were trying to do and engaged things and wanted to be there and kind to each other. There were 2 boys that came on the trip that already knew each other, but they weren't ever I think, a group that small, it's hard to do anyways, but it was just nice to see them including people, and the difference between the boys and the girls was kind of apparent, but eventually it kind of one group. Yeah, so it felt good.
What has been something that you've noticed or the impact of the work on these students?
I got this all the time, but we only get them for, over 3 weeks. So obviously from beginning of a 3-week program to the end, you see a lot more, and then you hope something happens, or they've learned something or keep learning after they're not at Deer Hill anymore. But I think over the periods that we do see them, some of the things is just communicate with each other. If it arises, they can direct either in a kind way or redirect, say that there's a conflict. Just speak kindly. And then I think another piece too is confidence. It's to see any of students try something new, and rowing I think is especially uncomfortable for anybody when you're starting out. And students evolve from being super uncomfortable to then navigating and using ferry angles and doing all that is really cool over a very short period of time. So
do you have a specific story that you could tell that would emulate that, what you're saying?
Yeah, back to the summer program, there was this one student who was on it. Her sister is a river guide, actually, so she encouraged her to do this program. And we go on the Green River through Desolation Canyon, so it's at least marketed as a little more intense. It is more intense than the Upper San Juan, but yeah, I don't really row, but I've been on water with my sister, and not so confident playing down her skills. And I was like, okay, on the oars. And the first part of that stretch is, water, trying to stay in the current. She did great at that. And we were like, okay, cool. We get down into the canyon where there's some more rapids. She's like, I don't really know about this. How about we take them? And then eventually she's like, okay, I'll try. And so she rows one of the rapids. I don't know what it was, but styles it, does great. I'm like, all right, you're gonna stay on the oars and just see how it goes. And pulling downstream using ferry angles, and I was like, you're a raft guide, you're hired. Just have her be able to talk about it too and be like, okay, yeah, I can do it. So
get to that point where you're like, all right, it's your boat now. I'm gonna
yeah, I'm happy to chit chat.
Did she get to the point where you were let her go through one of the scouted class 3s?
No, didn't do that. Yeah, I know.
That's a bummer. That's one of the things that's so wild to me about Outward Bound is that we're teaching the kids to paddle captain, and then we we're like, okay, great, now we're gonna have a captain's meeting, we're about the line, and we're gonna talk about it, and then we're gonna let you guide. quote unquote, because some of them are like still not right there, but it's like, okay, we're through Steer Ridge and there's like behind it. Oh gosh. And then there's me who's like, okay, but I fix it because I don't want to flip my boat.
Yeah. Nasty rocks in there at low water too, that it's, I don't know. Definitely need to make some moves.
That is very true, that you need to like know what heck's going on. So as like, you've been in the outdoor industry for the last several years, have seen Deer Hill for 2, and perhaps seen also that like spike of like this COVID after COVID and then coming down. Like, where do you feel like the industry is and at the moment?
Yeah, go ahead.
Or like maybe from your experience, like what do you think like the industry needs differently or to do better?
Interesting. I don't know that I can speak to that very well because I'm so new, but I will give an answer anyways. And this is from, I like being in commercial guiding and then also in outdoor ed and then hearing from other people that work at different organizations. So kind of things. I think overall, like I remember last year the enrollment in a lot of the programs was higher. This year, like I said, my summer program had 7 students or 8 or something like that. And I think the year before we had almost double. And it makes a trip in a lot of different ways. But what I'm hearing is that it's hard to get the enrollment that you would want or like to have as many students as we had previously. And I think part of that, like I was a substitute teacher. So I hear things from students that like, I love to do, a camp or a summer program or this like extracurricular for sports, but my family just doesn't have like a lot of money right now. And so it's like getting the funding for a student is, a lot of money. And then, finding the time. 3 weeks is a long time. Some students, that's their first time being away from home for that long. That's really scary. Some don't like sending their kids away for that long. Industry, your question about the industry is like, we're less students enrolling and coming. And I think the students, the demographic that we're getting, have a little bit different experience than what I've heard years previous have had. So I think, like we talk, what is the word I'm looking for? Like accessibility, get students that, have access to these types of experiences, getting them to come and be able to do an entire program or feel okay doing an entire program, whether that's like emotionally or physically. So I think it's looking at how we used to run programs, like started and they were doing 20 days of backpacking in the Wiminooch with a bunch of students. That might seem quite intense for students nowadays who spend a lot of time inside and on technology. So it's like meeting in middle somewhere, I guess.
Thank you. Are you ready to go into the rapid fire questions?
Sure.
Favorite stretch of river that you've done?
That's not fair. You can't ask that question.
Why not?
Can I answer with multiple stretches of river?
How about the stretch that you've had like a very memorable experience on?
The river right near us.
And then what is your favorite meal that you've helped cook on the river?
Ooh. Okay, on a personal trip, probably like French toast with brioche bread, or upside down cake in a Dutch oven.
And then what is the one meal that you keep seeing that you feel like should be axed or dessert?
Oh man. Oh, that's hard. I don't know. Well, we all remember Asian surprise, but I think that's already next, so we're good on that one.
And then do you have any trips planning that you're planning? Trips on the horizon?
I'm very fortunate. I've gotten to do a lot of stretches, like a lot of personal trips on stretches of river that I've really wanted to do this year. And kind of to that is I'm going on the Grand Canyon in February. And I'm going to be able to row some of that. So I'm really excited.
The thing that you thought you would never be up for is now the thing that you're stoked on doing.
Exactly. Yes.
Well, Devon, thank you for coming on, and I hope that you can get yourself adequately prepared for your excursion down the Grand Canyon in the Colorado.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Okay.